Hello, friends. Welcome to week 5 of our Lent pilgrimage. And the theme for this week is going to be will. And we've got another amazing guest. It's going to be sharing his thoughts, reflections, a bit of insight, a bit about himself as well. So we've got Michael Wells coming from Oz, just south of Sydney, Ulladulla. Affectionately known to me as Swello. And Swello, you've picked an amazing backdrop there, the ocean, and it's 6:30 in the morning, sunrise.
Absolutely, Malc. Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I was going to say Michael Wells. That seemed very formal. I don't think I've had many people use my proper name for a while. So
Well,
yeah.
you've got it on your name on the screen. It says Michael and Cath Wells iPhone. So
Oh well, I'll be that.
yeah.
So yeah. So look, I thought I'd bring you to one of my favourite places. This is Mollymook Beach. This I thought we could bring in a bit of a sunset, but the place behind me too is my favorite surfing spot of all time when it works. It probably works. It worked about 4 days ago, and it was the first time in 2 years. So yeah,
Amazing.
nice little
Amazing.
place. Yes. So
Well,
I suppose So I've known you for probably a little while, Mal, years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about yourself.
So yeah, look, I'm a nurse who lives in Milton Ulladulla. So yeah, I've travelled the world a bit. I lived in the UK with you guys over there for a while. I've married an English girl, but yeah, so I'm a guy in Australia, pretty much who surfs most of the time and lives a perfect life, really. No.
Yeah. And you've got a family, fairly well, mostly teenagers now.
Yeah, so yeah, 3 children, mate. Yeah, one of them's just doing his gap year over in the UK now, so that's pretty interesting. Do the old traditional swap overseas. Yeah, I've got 2 daughters as well that are here, one 16 and one 13. So yeah, living their life of teenagehood, which is fun, and I'm sure you can attest to that, Mark. Fun time of
Yeah.
life.
Absolutely. Oh, great. Well, thanks for joining us on this. This is you've done this. Maybe is it once before now? The Lent challenge.
Yeah, so last year,
Yeah,
yeah, it was
last
my
year. Yeah,
first
yeah,
time.
yeah. So amazing to have you involved in that, and then great to be able to kind of for the rest of the pilgrims to kind of hear a bit about yourself.
No
So
problems, Matt.
the theme of will. So I guess let's just dive in there and what does the word will mean to you? Kind of how can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. When you asked me to talk about this, I was thinking, oof, that's a deep sort of question. Yeah, look, I suppose certainly for me when I first started the journey as a Christian, like there's obviously understanding like what God's will is, and what that is for your life. And I think one of my favorite preachers always sort of says when he was counseling people, he would allow them to have a couple of minutes about themselves and their journey, but then would spend the rest of the time talking about God's will in their life and what God says about them. So I suppose for me,
Yeah,
delving into the Bible and having that as my benchmark of like, what God's plan is, I suppose, for myself and for everyone on the earth, but also sort of how does that play out in my life. But I
yeah,
suppose then there's that, then there's that gift that he has given us, that free will, you know what I
mm,
mean, to sort of really to choose. And, then there's that sort of how do we exercise that, because
mm,
that can be a journey, you know what I mean? I think that has many aspects when you first start, you know what I mean? It's probably more insisting his will than yours because, you're probably just used to doing everything that you're used to doing and, how you react. I always used to say that being a Christian, when I first started, if it felt natural, it was wrong. My natural way of doing things was which was why it also drew me towards what God's stuff was usually right because it
right.
sort of just
Yeah.
I knew in my heart of hearts that it was right.
Well,
But
so with that, it sounds like you're saying then kind of your journey in faith has actually helped you understand your will even better because it's
yeah,
kind of what God's will is for you became your will and they became
yeah,
aligned. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think a lot of us, if you and a lot of people, like you can really connect to people because I think on a deeper level, everyone, God has that sort of image inside of them, you know what I mean? And there's that will to sort of, and I think that's what you can attach yourself to. And I know for myself, I mean, when I feel like that I'm walking in God's will, it just feels so right down inside. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's not those sort of natural desires. But I know this is a
Yeah.
wrestle. Like I think these things are not always simple, and I think sometimes it's made out to be simple. And I was thinking when you first asked me about this, and
Mhm.
if it's okay to share something personal about us,
I'd love
is
to
it
hear
when
that. Yeah.
when I first met you. We're up at a camp in Loch Lomond, up the old summer camps, and I remember having a deep and meaningful with you out on the point one day, and at the time you were wrestling massively with the fact that we were born into a world that was broken. You were
Mm.
incensed. You were incensed by the fact that we were fallen and not perfect. And I so loved your heart, and I remember that wrestle, and like, yeah, I think that these things are working out God's will and all that sort of stuff. It can be a real wrestle. I
Mm.
mean, sometimes like that. Your drive again. Sort of what's in what God has for us in our lives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, and
Well,
I think just
that's yeah. I do have a vague memory of that conversation. I think interesting kind of season for me that was in my spiritual kind of journey,
yeah,
and I think what is central to kind of my philosophy now and what we practice in Renew is that we're all a work in progress,
yeah,
and so that is quite fundamental in terms of understanding where our will and our what we become disciplined in or we strive for or we surrender to
absolutely,
is
absolutely.
if that's your posture, we're a work in progress, then it changes quite a lot of things, isn't it? It's not just
It
actually what you want.
it does, mate. Yeah, and I've always loved that. Like there's obviously the Jewish way of writing. The Bible's obviously written in a few languages and stuff. And there's the Greek style and the Jewish style. And I've been more drawn over the last years over to the Jewish style of things. You know what I mean? Which is the God is your body is a temple for God and is an outworking of what it is, as opposed to the Greek way of thinking, which is the body's always a sinful thing and a bad thing and will always draw you away. Not
Yes.
that not that we shouldn't be mindful that our body and our natural will sometimes can lead us astray, but I much prefer that sort of whole way of thinking that that our bodies are that sort of temple to be able to be used and stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a hard thing, and like you say, on a daily basis, that can be demonstrated extremely well or extremely poorly sometimes. But
Yes.
yeah, but it
And
definitely a work in progress, mate.
so kind of this journey we're on these 7 weeks. Um, there's a bit there's a kind of we're denying ourselves certain things in terms of fasting. We're
Yeah,
I guess we're denying ourselves laziness in terms of not exercising. There's a
absolutely.
so there we are exercising our will, but it is definitely underneath surrendering under a
Yeah,
higher purpose and a reposturing of our soul. That's the purpose of what we're doing. So, um, some people, myself included, really struggle with seasons like this where you're having to really discipline yourself. Um, I don't know what are your thoughts on kind of how do you find your motivation or your to do this type
so
of thing?
yeah, absolutely. So look, I think in general, yeah, look, I would definitely say that I'm not a real disciplined person. I'm a habitual person. I think if I put my mind to things, and it's sort of interesting. I think once I put my mind to the Lent challenge, I I'm fine with it. I
Right.
just will be
Okay.
routine and just do it, and you know what I mean, and just sort of get it. I've had seasons where I commit to surfing every day, and I'm up every day, and I just sort of will just habitually do it. Again, if there's people to do it with, 100 times sort of easier, I think. And again, that's probably one of the great things about the Lent challenge is to have people with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, but at times, you know what I mean. Like it is a challenge, you know what I mean. And I think it's interesting, just sort of trying to to be always sort of disciplined about things. You know what I mean? Like it's not always a simple thing. And I think sometimes finding God's will in all of that, like I know when sometimes you start, people are like, what's my ministry and what should I do for God and all those sorts of things. And I've
Yeah.
personally found over the time is that sometimes it's like trying to find happiness. You can't just go and say, oh, I'm going to go be happy now. I mean, is nearly a byproduct of doing things. And I find sometimes God will and all those things are a byproduct of doing things. You know what I mean? Just pushing yourself into things. And I was thinking an example of that is that after COVID, my wife and I decided that we would, just to give the church a break and just for all the things that had gone on, we pretty much plugged ourselves into the kids ministry and just did kids ministry for
Right.
seemed like years, to be fair, like every week.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I was like, and again, they asked us to be on kid, like, it wasn't like, oh, that's my calling and stuff. But
Yeah.
we pushed ourselves into it. And there was
Mm.
one, I think God graces you. There was an absolute grace over us. I felt so comfortable doing it. I was encouraged to be in kids' church. I felt it was a true blessing because I got to know all of the children individually, as opposed to like, that's Malcolm's kids. I got to know every one of the kids, their personalities. And, I think God graces you for things. So sometimes I think, throwing yourself into things is just, like, as opposed to sitting around and contemplating your navel for too long.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know?
Yeah.
So I think.
You mentioned that about kind of God's grace to give you grace to do that thing. So that also suggests maybe that, there's certain things and maybe seasons that we don't have to rely on our strength or our strength of will to do a thing. Our discipline,
100%.
our faithfulness is almost like it's been given to us. Is that yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think, like, and again, like through all the hard times, and it's been interesting recently where, my wife's had some significant pain to walk through for months and months and months, like nearly a year now. And, we stand on all of those prayers and stuff that are around like healing, and we know what God can do and all those sorts of things, but then there's a time when you've got to work out things that don't get fixed just today or tomorrow.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to draw yourself back to just give me the grace for today. Just give me the grace for the next couple of hours, to get through. And it's an interesting thing. I think sometimes we, forecast forward and then I think that, sometimes being really disciplined about things is a great thing, but then sometimes we rely, then that nearly sometimes builds up that reliance on that, well, I can do things and because I'm a disciplined person, it's all great. And sometimes that's not really, there's God's, I think, will, like he will grace us through hard times. He will grace us through good times. Good times are some of the hardest times as well, because then that's when, yourself sort of can swell up and pride up. But that it's sort of, sometimes it's got to just be drawn back to that, just let's, thank you for that grace for today and that ability to walk through. And then maybe later on you can reflect on things. But
that's really good. That's really helpful. I think, the message we get from, our culture, popular culture, is that it's all down to us. It's down to grit, determination. You've just got to, if you're not achieving, you're not doing X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
You're slacking. Almost like you haven't got it sorted. So there's that's quite an interesting countercultural perspective, that and you've obviously experienced it as well. And you said about Cath having a long season of pain, that those times of suffering or hardship, they're type of wilderness experiences, like we're kind of mocking now in this image of Lent, mocking the kind of Jesus is, as in a type of a wilderness experience that we're entering into. So, and we're choosing to willingly going into that. There's some things that we don't choose to go into, do we? We're taken.
Not absolutely. And that's the longer you play in this game, the more you'll realize that you'll be taken into things. And I know, and I always love that wooden experience, when you reflect on how Christ did it. He had angels ministering to him in the desert and stuff. So it's sort of bizarre. We probably always want to be away from those wilderness experiences, but sometimes, that brings that deepest fruit, because and I know my wife has, gone to another level with God and stuff. She's an amazing woman, like just, and just that, I think, it's just, like you say, you'd never choose some of these experiences, but they really do, and like you say, a lot of people are not choosing to do this Lent challenge and stuff like that. But I
Yeah.
know that every time out of these things, there are just things that are broken. Fasting just,
Yeah.
like denying yourself, just sort of it does. There are things that I think are only broken in that realm.
Yeah.
Especially in the spiritual realm.
I think that's the fasting one is a really powerful one for me personally. My experience of choosing. So I'm entering into my will of saying I'm not going to eat because I'm dedicating this day or this period of time to prayer and to worshipping of my creator, kind of like, and to
Yeah,
meditate into that reality. And so there's a surrendering, because the human will is to eat, isn't it? It's to consume. So
yeah,
that's a really tangible one that we're practicing now, is like that we're denying ourselves, we're surrendering our will to, because there's a greater good that we're seeking
yeah,
to align ourselves with. I Some of the things that I sensed over the years of, wanting to, feeling like this was God's will to do this thing, or to um, do this project, whatever it was. If I'd have
yeah,
kind of known what that would have entailed going through it, I never would have entered into it. But so
yeah.
there's sometimes we don't know what the journey is going to unfold, and we become stronger because of it, but probably would never would
100%.
would go into it.
100%. Yeah. And you have always stuck in my mind, Malcolm. I remember when you were starting that building thing and then employing people out of jail, and you're doing that literally in the middle of having like two young children, renovating your house. You know what I mean? Like there was a nearly even a blind faith of yours. You know what I mean? Just to go, this is just going to work, and I'm going to make it. Like it's going to happen. And that's the thing. I think sometimes God just wants us to be faithful and just to walk into things, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
walk through things and not get to that point, because I think it's a real dodgy place where you get to where it's like, well, God, why are you not fixing this? Why is this not, like being done? And, this is the mantra, isn't it, I suppose, of lots of people. And look,
yeah,
even to be fair, one of my daughters at the moment is really, struggles with her faith because she understands who Jesus is and what he can do. And she's like, why does he not come back and just fix it now? Why is all this suffering, all these things, And
yeah,
my heart bleeds. And I'm like, look, I fully get it. But I think that when
yeah,
you start to then replace yourself, when we determine like this is how it should be done, then we start to put ourselves in the place of God,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
goes down a track, So sometimes there is that, just stepping out in faith. And like you say, Mark, like I think, you can look back now and say how many of your projects have been blessed, but again, it was just stepping out in faith. And like you say, you probably wouldn't have done it if you'd known all the details of what would have happened and all the, heartache and stuff. But yeah, I think
yeah,
what he wants, though, isn't it? I suppose just us for it to be,
yeah. I mean,
those
no,
people.
absolutely. In my experience, absolutely no regrets at all. But
Yeah.
in terms of knowing the journey, would like be like, okay, wow, maybe I'll give that one a miss.
And that should encourage us, shouldn't it? Really, just to
Yeah,
continue to step out in faith, And even if something falls over, so what? You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Just let's crack on. You know what I mean? And like, I suppose it's just about how do we take God's kingdom everywhere, as best
yeah.
we can, and
Mm.
and mirror that for people. And yeah,
Yeah. It's looking very sunny behind you now.
yeah. This is what I was hoping you'd be
Yeah.
able to capture in the background.
So it's great. This is a nice effect of this conversation. There's more and more light coming into it. So that's good metaphor. So
All about metaphors, bro.
yeah, that's all right. One of the kind of our practices in Renew is using the Lord's Prayer to exercise with. So I probably ruined the prayer for quite a few people by making them to have extremely long held squats through there.
Yeah, well done, Mark. Good job.
But it's actually a really amazing tool to use, and particularly kind of breathing through it and letting the words kind of really encourage and challenge you, because it's just an amazing prayer.
Yeah,
It's a gift. It's a gift when we're given. A prayer that Jesus showed us to model our prayers on. And a big part of that is, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth. We're
yeah,
inviting God's will to be done in us and on this earth and all around us. For me, that is such a powerful thing to kind of to actually speak that out, breathe it out every day, as a kind of,
massive, man, massive. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
just would love to hear any thoughts or reflections on um, yeah, of how you practice kind of trying to discern God's will for your a given day or season or an event, whatever it is. How do you go about that?
Yeah, look, yeah, that's a big thing, isn't it? Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like I sort of, I suppose, you know what I mean? Like I feel as my job, I'm a bit of a cheat as a Christian sometimes. So my job, is in hospitals and in emergency, and I walk through, people as they sort of end, their life ends and stuff with families and stuff. So I feel
Yeah,
like, like I suppose sometimes, when I think about, what does that feel like to be submitted to his will, like I think it brings hope. I mean, I think
right.
when you resolve yourself to like going, okay, this is God's will for my life, you know what I mean? And I'm going to walk it out and really moving away from that, like, oh, if my life is going great, God's blessing me. And if it's bad, then God's against me. Like all
Right. Okay.
moving all that stuff to the side and stuff and
Yeah.
just going, look, wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, God's will, if I choose it and stuff, that's where it's going to be and stuff. And I
Mm.
feel that, one of the things that really distresses me in my job is that I see people come in with no hope, like you just see people and, like I probably see the end of people that, walk out of life without any will, you know what I mean? That just
Yeah.
are, just respond to whatever's around and all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
And sometimes their health is one of those things that really, which is one of the reasons I love so much this Lent challenge. And one of the real focuses around, like spiritual, but mind and body, you know what I mean? I think sometimes, yeah, lots of people treat their body like a playground more than it is a temple. But
Yeah.
I think that it's a blessing sometimes to really walk that out. So I suppose for me, one of the things I've always tried to do is to one, connect to people, to see the person in someone, but also just that
Yeah.
to speak life into people, like you don't always have to mention the word of Jesus, but you can certainly speak life into people, you can
Mm.
be there, you can walk with them. And, I spend a lot of time with it, whether it be the staff or whether it be patients and stuff. I try to bring a bit of a smile to their face, but I also try to, just sort of walk with them. And
Yeah.
I know that in my job, I've many times throughout a week, I will have to just be like, God, please give me the wisdom, to walk
Mm.
out this situation with someone, whether it
Yeah.
be difficult discussions, whether it be walking through the end of life with people, whatever it be, but just to
Yeah.
give me that, that and that wisdom to say nothing, to just
Yeah.
sit with
Right.
someone, which again for an extrovert is just a challenging space. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah. So I suppose just those sort of things. Like how do I do it into my daily thing? Not just in our safe spots. Like I've like our churches and stuff are our safe places to do that and hang with our Christian friends in those safe places. But how do I do it amongst all my friends that are not Christians? How do you walk that out? How do you move away from that? Like we have to be perfect people and stuff, which just to
Yeah.
be fair winds up a whole lot of people that we
Mm.
portray, and like it's sort of
Yeah.
bizarre because I think the longer you do being a Christian, the more you realize that we're all fallen and we're all, like
Yeah.
not perfect versions. But unfortunately people see that and sometimes people like to portray that as a Christian. I really like to just be real, walk with people in the real journey of life, you know what I mean? But also just bring in that hope, like there's a lot of
Yeah.
conversations you will have with people. And I think the more you're sensitive to it, the more you realize that, a lot of things can turn to the negative or we've had negative experiences or whatever, like just really trying to
Yeah.
be that walking out that positivity, not in a silly way, not in a way that's not real, but just like, yeah,
Yeah. That it's a bit of a change of posture, that, because rather than your walk of faith being one of obligation, or kind of like
yeah,
being the person you see that you're meant to be, rather than actually a life of surrendering to say, okay, no, I'm missing the mark. That's why I need God in my life, and then you've been
yeah,
training to that will. So you're it's one of extreme humility, isn't it? Because you're saying no,
yeah,
it's not about me and my performance.
no,
Um,
not at all.
and I'm seeking to shape myself to surrender to a higher purpose, and which is it's a very different. So you can't help but become humble in And so
I, I,
it's a walk of
yeah,
humility, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah. And I think we've always got to be, keep that at the forefront of our minds. You know what I mean? Because I think, like, yeah, if we let ourselves get too carried away with all of it, whatever we do or our achievements, and the reality is too, like the Bible gives us so much wisdom and knowledge, like so much, of a great way to walk out your life. Sometimes then that does walk out in our lives, and then we can sit there and be, oh, look at this and look how great, you know what I mean? Like, but where some people don't have that, they don't have that
Um,
incredible wisdom that God gives us, and yeah, and it's sort of interesting. Last couple of years too, I've really felt like, God is a God of order. You know what I mean? And like, and I find that even when we pray for people, or even my job, if you take, for instance, like I spend a whole lot of time bringing people's body back into order. You know what I mean?
right. Yes.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
you work in emergency, and that's our whole job and stuff. And I feel
Yeah.
that God is a God of order. You know what I mean? And even when you
Right.
pray for someone, you're praying for, like, their life to come back into order, or their health to come back into order. Like, so
Mm.
I find that's another thing. Like just that sort of like, how can I bring, not in a, I don't know, righteous way that it's all up and down, and
Yeah.
like it, but it just that, how do you bring that order back into somebody's life? You know what I mean? Like one of the experiences that challenged me recently as an elder in our church is that we pray for people, when they come up the front, and like I've really, you really have to surrender yourself and really, try to be in tune with, what the Spirit sort of says and stuff, because I really try to be as personal to people as I can. And so, like I really feel that, like it, yeah, anyway, that's been a real personal journey for me to be able
Right.
to do
Okay.
that. But I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times you are bringing that godly order to somebody's life. You know what I mean? Just that,
Right. Okay. So, yeah, it's a great analogy.
like there's a lot of chaos that reigns around us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people, and again, we have things to perpetuate all that, the all online stuff perpetuates that. But, like just helping someone, be centered and grounded, and
Yeah.
knowing who they are, knowing that God just, really does have a purpose for them, knowing it's an interesting thing, like walking out with new Christians. Have you done that recently? Walked out with some new Christians? I just find it really interesting, like the questions they have, and just that, the things that we probably take for granted, that they don't really
Yeah.
understand about what God has for them and who He says they are, and
Yeah.
like just who Christ is, like that,
Yeah.
that perfect submitted will, like let's face it, like if there's ever a great example, it's Christ. He was always about His Father's will. He submitted to His Father's will. Everything He achieved on earth, as while He was here, He did as a human. He didn't call
Yeah.
on his heavenly realms and,
Yeah.
godly things. He truly just walked out His Father's will,
Yeah. Yeah.
like always astounds me, like it astounds me what He achieved on the cross, but it astounds me the way He walked out His life as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
always,
And
always,
yeah, an amazing example of, like you said, what a great model of surrendering our will
yeah,
to the Father's will. It's I mean, it's probably yeah, this is a great kind of uh, part of our kind of reposturing towards the cross. Understand this kind of topic of will, and understanding that, and kind of there. I think they'll always, like you said at the beginning, that we've been given this free will to make this choice, but it's almost like you're given this free will to exercise it, but probably more than exercising it, it's actually surrendering it,
absolutely.
which is a really interesting, just countercultural idea, isn't it?
Well, and I think sometimes people feel like that if it's like, if I'm just this perfect sort of Christian, like I've just surrendered myself to being this, sort of one-dimensional Christian, but it's like He wants you to surrender your will, so you, the perfect version of you will come out. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like that's what He's trying to get at. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's like, yeah,
yeah,
we are surrendering to His will, and like, like His way of doing things, and but it's like you and again, like, and then I'm part of a body, like that's the whole thing, isn't it? We're all
yeah.
designed to be part of a Christian body, you know what I mean? And whether I'm a toe
Mm.
or a kneecap or whatever I am, you know what I mean, amongst that, you know what I mean? Like that you are that, and that's one of those real encouraging things, that when you are in a church where you feel like there are those, you know, we're all got those different expressions of God in our lives, that we walk
Yeah.
out, and He's gifted us with different things, so
Mm.
I think it's understanding that will that he wants in our life, that if we surrender to his, that he'll work out that version of you that is,
That
the
is
one
right.
that you've always wanted.
It's ultimately great for you. It's a great outcome for you. And
100%.
this is the analogy of the physical prayer, the physical exercise. That there's in order to get those kind of great outcomes, sometimes doesn't mean it's
Sure.
just going to be completely all rosy. Actually, you'll be bumpy, it'll be tricky.
Yeah,
You'll
absolutely.
have moments of a great joy and life experiences of all sorts, but ultimately, if you're surrendered, it will be a great outcome.
Um,
Yeah,
mate,
you win in the end.
mate, anyone who thinks walking with Christ is going to be a fantastically lovely experience, in for a bit of a rude shock, really, aren't they? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm sure there's a good surfing analogy you've got there. But
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I was talking to someone the other day. If you weigh up the amount of time you actually stand up surfing for the amount of effort and time and getting smashed doing it, it's a ridiculously poor
there we go.
ratio.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But the but the joy of those couple of seconds of standing up is well worth it for some bizarre reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
Swelly, this is great. We probably should kind of bring this into to land now. And the sun's
absolutely.
coming up. We can fully see your face.
Oh yeah, look at that. There's a proper.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks so much for kind of unpacking that a bit for us. It's really great. There's loads of stuff in there that we can meditate on and reflect back. And for some of us it may be a new idea. Some of us it may be just a reminder. Some of us, it'll be for different people. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for kind of putting that out and sharing something yourself. And it's been really great and amazing. It is amazing, isn't it? Really, that being able to connect like this now, other side of the world, and being part of this community, doing something. It's quite tremendous. So thank you for being willing to do that.
oh, Marco, it's always a pleasure, mate. I love hanging with you, and yeah, look, what a great community you've sort of gathered together, mate. So yeah, well done, mate. Hats off to you, mate. You know, you're the most connected man I think I know, mate. So well done, which is a great thing, mate. Yeah, people want to. Yeah, so thanks so much for the time, mate. Love it. Love sharing. And yeah,
Brilliant.
blessings to you, bro.
Cheers, Swello. All the best.
Cheers, guys.